This is Behind the Scenes Oklahoma. Hey everyone, welcome to Behind the Scenes Oklahoma, where we spotlight the storytellers shaping the film industry right here in our state. I'm Anna Berry, and very happy to talk to you about a really powerful documentary, Poetic Justice, The Art of Healing. And this film follows women incarcerated at the Eddie Warrior Correctional Center in Oklahoma, and they discover the healing power of writing, poetry, and creative expression. Joining me are two incredible women behind this project. I've got Amy Janes, the executive director of the Dead Center Film Festival and a longtime filmmaker and industry leader right here in the state, and Nicol Ragland, award-winning documentary photographer and filmmaker. Amy, Nicole, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
Well, I had the opportunity to see Poetic Justice at Circle Cinema a few months ago, and it was such a powerful film. And the message of finding your voice despite your circumstances. But I want to go back to the beginning. I want to hear the origin story. So who had the first idea for this?
Actually, it was a gentleman named John Budd, who is a dear friend of ours and also very influential in the state of Oklahoma. And he had gone to an event where all of the artwork was displayed and came back right afterwards and said, Amy, we got to grab breakfast. I think there's a film here. And after a gorgeous breakfast and discussing the reality of the prison systems in Oklahoma, I knew we had to do something. And of course, my right hand is Nicol Ragland. So in that moment, I picked up the phone and pitched the idea to her of us going into these prisons, which neither of us have ever had access to prior to moving to Oklahoma. And it was all the work I've done in the past in documentary has always been on the art and the artists. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. And I think, Nicole, I'll let you speak for yourself, but when I came to you with this idea, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, Amy and I are always really focused on impact media and the power of art focused on change. And me specifically, I mean, I've always been a lover of poetry and the power of poetry and the culmination of knowing that there's so much work in defense of the systemic issues in Oklahoma and all of these organizations that are working in response to the fact that we are now still in the top 5 of incarcerating women across the state, learning the incredible work and programs that are working towards rehabilitation versus criminalization. So we were very enamored very quickly and said yes right away. And John Budd has been instrumental, not only as our executive producer, but also on the board of the nonprofit itself. So yeah.
Okay, so talk about that. It's a documentary, but it's also a nonprofit that you were telling the story of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Poetic Justice is a nonprofit that is based out of Tulsa. It's been in cities all over, well, California, Oklahoma. What am I missing? Mexico. And
yeah, Tijuana, Oregon, Massachusetts. Yeah. But originating in Tulsa County jails starting 10 years ago by co-founder Ellen Stackable. So started there in Tulsa, working in the jails within Oklahoma, and then moving into prisons within Oklahoma, and then amplifying into different states across the country, and now Tijuana in a rehabilitation center, which is incredible. Yeah.
And so how did you merge those two from a nonprofit, the story of that, to picking this one place and these women? How did you go from such a broad idea and concept, many years, to something that is so specific and a little bit more intentional versus the bigger picture? How'd you do that?
I think that came out of my initial conversation with Ellen. After I spoke with John, I called Ellen and we sat on the phone for an easy 2 hours, just recognizing how many things we had in common and how impactful her work has been. And that was when it came from a genuine invitation from Ellen, who then had to get permission from the women, obviously, inside the class. But she was going to be teaching out at Eddie Warrior, which is just south of Tulsa. So that for us was going to be, we wanted to be in the room with Ellen while our classes going on at Mabel Bassett. The first time we went in there, we really felt it was important to also follow Ellen, and she was going to be in Tulsa.
So what were some of the challenges you faced when going into the correctional facility? I've personally never been into one, and I think it was your first time as well. So what challenges did you face, and what did you see?
Go ahead, Nicole. What was our biggest challenge?
Initial challenge, which obviously you can imagine, I mean, it was just Amy and I was shooting and Amy was running sound, and so we were just this tiny little 2-woman team, which is significantly less threatening than our usual documentary crew, which can be, up to 10 people dealing with a documentary film. So the fact that we were less threatening and just two women going into a women's prison was really helpful. So bringing in camera gear and sound gear, initially it was like they wanted to go through every single piece of equipment, but we gradually built trust. Initially it was, and also too, like going through every piece of equipment and then being funneled into a tiny little church
That's
classroom building. It's like you will go into this room for 2 hours and you will be ushered directly out, right? And so it was a very limited amount of space that we had to work with, which wasn't easy because we wanted to show the prison itself. And so for, I'd say, what, Amy, like 6 months,
easy, yeah.
we weren't able to show the prison, which obviously that backdrop is so very important to the story. And so it took us really nurturing the relationship with the DOC and the warden and the chaplain at the time, and they've changed chaplains. And so it just was building relationships and showing that we cared about this women. We wanted to amplify the power of this particular program, which I think ultimately then the DOC got inspired by the story that we were telling as opposed to the system itself and dark walls and the typical bias perspective of prisons. So it was tough at first, but it took a long time. And then we eventually got into the yard, to the cafeteria, to the bunks, and yeah. So that was amazing to get into.
So walk me through that a little bit. I see a picture already. So you have camera and you're running sound. So what did you shoot it on? And did you use a lav? Were you doing boom? How did that work?
I was sound and I was boom, which was very, very tiny, like to Nicole's, I don't think she made it apparent how small the space was. And so my job was to not only get out of her way, but to be able to try to catch the voices. Fortunately, Nicole's camera had a lav on a straight mic off of it as well, which I think ultimately our editor Mark Burton had to pull a lot from that. It was a tight quarter with a lot moving fast. We weren't familiar with what the environment was going to look like. It was quite a juggle. What did you shoot on, Cole?
The Sony A7S. Yeah. And mostly a 50 millimeter and an on-camera mic. Yeah. Very tiny, which is an amazing little rig.
So did you go in with a shot list or did you go in with an open mind?
Nicole and I work a little bit different. So I would say yes and no, right? I go in there and I love to find the story. We went on, both of us agree very much in the idea of a fly on the wall and kind of letting the environment, I think more to Nicole, drag her camera where it needs to be, like flows through the room. I have always been I'm an editor for many, many years, 30 years now. And so give me 1,000 hours and I will find you a story kind of person. Nicole works a little bit differently. How would you say, what did you think? What was your idea going in there?
I mean, we're a really good team and we've worked together for a long time. And I think we balance each other out for that reason. Like I haven't even gotten to a place where I feel like I'm directing and shooting to edit. I haven't gotten there. And that's kind of my goal, is to go in with a particular storyline so that we are shooting and directing to edit. But it's super helpful to have Amy as a partner that's just like, get as much as we possibly can in the can, so that I think the combination of both of us, it allows for still somewhat of a verite approach where we're, the whole goal is we don't come in with a specific agenda. And we wanted to honor the class and the women, right? And building that trust was obviously super important and something we had no idea how long it would take, but it was such a beautiful, welcoming experience and already established trust by virtue of Ellen and the volunteers. And so we went in shooting like the nature of the class and what happens within the dynamic of the class and honoring that. So
what was that process like? How did you build trust with these women who shared such personal stories?
I think they have said this to us as well. It happened quite authentically, quite quickly. For me, I don't know why my whole life I've been snapping when something's exciting or when I'm happy or when I'm not allowed to talk, but I agree. And at the end of our very first class, or I guess even in between the class, as they were reading their poetry, these women started snapping, and that's how they showed their appreciation during class. And I like started to bawl, and I was like, oh my God, these are my people. And I think they noticed the authenticity of Nicole and I really being there to hold space for them quite quickly, because I think all of the women opened up, and especially some of the women we thought never would say a word by the end, had a lot to say to us on camera. And we never, ever, ever asked why they were in prison. That was something for them to share or not. We went in there recognizing them as artists in training, understanding I don't know poetry to save my life. Nicole is my poet that helps me understand that. And these women then allowed me to have a much bigger door, and we just held that space for them.
And also, I mean, I would say too that this was an outlet for them. It was a portal for their voice to the outside world. And very quick, I was so surprised how quickly, because I was right up in there with my camera. I mean, very, very close, and
Literally.
tears and shaking hands and stories of trauma and abuse and the specifics of why they're there. And to Amy's point, it's a very adamant approach with Poetic Justice to honor the women, to not focus on their crimes, but instead saying, we want to hear your story, and here's a pen and a journal, and write a letter to your younger self. And by virtue of that gives them, license to express themselves. And in comparison to like so many of the programs in prison, many of which are faith-based, which, Godspeed, that may be somebody's choice, but that's a specific thing to abide by in order to heal. But this is rather, we want to hear your story, and here's an outlet to do so. So by virtue of the program, but then also I think our camera, they were just excited to share. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this was the first time they felt like they were actually going to be heard, right? Like they had practiced prior to us with a photographer coming in doing some incredible portraits. And I think they felt seen. And this was the first time that they were really going to feel heard. And for a lot of these women have been fighting cases while still in prison. They're still punching to try to get somebody to pay attention to their cause, and maybe they shouldn't be in there. And to a lot of the people that we spoke to, not a lot, but there was a handful of women in there that really have no business being in prison, but they're still there for another 6, 7, 8, 10 years. And this was an opportunity for them to peel back the ego and recognize, well, maybe somebody might hear me now.
And I know you did a screening at the correctional facility. So what was that like when they got to see themselves?
It was the most amazing night. I mean, you're going to make me cry thinking about it.
Yeah.
One of the biggest moments was all the women at the end. We all come together and we hold hands and we have a chant. And this particular screening had men and women in it. And our editor, Eric Burton, is just a lovely soul, a lovely human being. And I really believe one of the reasons why we were able to get the insight working so closely with Nicole and the real meat of this film and emotion. And after the film, the women were all over the place, happy, tears. And the woman who got up and went to stand next to Eric Burton was very hesitant at first. And then he said she grabbed her hand and looked at him and said, you are the first man I haven't been afraid of my entire life. And he said that just hit him like a ton of bricks. Like the unmasking, the tearing down of bricks in that room, in that particular moment was palatable. You could feel it. And I think this young lady saying, look, I feel safe with you man, never felt safe with a man before in my life, was huge. I mean, that's the moment that sums it all up for me that night.
How long were you there? So I know you both live in Oklahoma City. How did that work? Did you go for a day? Did you stay at a hotel? Where did you back and forth? How long were you on set and production?
We started like September. Go ahead, Nicole. I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, the class was a year, and the class happened once, sometimes twice a month. So we drove out to Eddie Warrior, which is a 2-hour drive there to our back. So we just carved out a day for a year.
We'd leave at 9:00 at night from the prison, thinking, a 2-hour drive ahead of us, thinking, my God, what did we just experience? It was always, every time we left was so moving.
And did you go back to your production office and upload the footage and watch it? Did you wait after a few months? What's the process like?
I mean, it was a lot of storing of footage and sitting on footage for a while, and then figuring out the story. Again, this was significantly more of the process of getting as much footage as we can, because it was so overwhelming, and we heard so many different stories, and trying to culminate a storyline and an arc for a film took some time, for sure. So, I mean, we sat on it for what, 9 months, while we were raising funds, talking to our editor, getting Eric locked in. He's very busy and sought after because he's incredibly talented. So getting him locked in, and then hunkering down probably beginning of last year, and really working from like January to May, working super hard on the edit. Yeah, and then fine tuning it into the summer.
So did you timestamp the footage, or did you give it to him to do it and you look at it? I'm just thinking from the creative side of having all this footage. How did you narrow it down?
I do like an initial string out of what I think is working. And we knew that we had the timing of Michelle, who was our main character, of getting out of prison. She also was such a significant character in that she's just not your typical inmate, right? I mean, she just comes across as a beautiful, articulate, very intelligent soccer mom, which she is, right? And so we want, so much of our intention with this film is to challenge unconscious bias of, to quote Mariah in the film, everyone thinks that bad women go to prison, full stop. So there's, so much to be learned and educated on so many different stories, and knowing that we had the timing of Michelle and her being so vulnerable and honest and revealing so much of her story on camera without us really directing her too much. I mean, she just was so available and willing, and such a fascinating person that again challenges that unconscious bias. And then having her get out during the time that we were, editing was fantastic.
Was that planned at all, or did you know Michelle had that arc coming, or was that something that spontaneously came and you go, let's focus in on this? Cool.
Absolutely. It was 100% spontaneous. Again, it was never our intention to go in there. We didn't feel it was important for people people can dig, people can find, they can figure it out, but that's not why we were here. We really was important for us to be able to tell the story. And so then when Eric and Nicole, and then ultimately myself, agreed that we should go forward with keeping her charge in, Ellen Stackpole had a little bit of a big question, I would argue, and she got very, very nervous about the fact that we were going to be exposing something as, I mean, it's got some pretty, it's a pretty tough sentencing for the rest of your life, right? But we went back to Michelle with Ellen's concerns, and Geneva and Michelle are best besties. And Michelle called Geneva, and the two of them were like, look, this is what Ellen's been teaching us this entire time, is like, we have to speak up. We have to say what we've done and own who we are, or it just keeps getting passed down and passed down. And all of a sudden, I'm not truly myself, but this is not truly myself, but this is my punishment, but I've taken care of my punishment. Like the dichotomy of all of these things that happen to these women in prison as they're about to come back into, be instated into the mainstream as much as they possibly can, was very much Michelle and Geneva's thought that this must stay in there, and it must be a place for us to talk about, conversation about this. Michelle's history is quite, to get to the charge she had a pretty horrible childhood. And of course we didn't go into that either, because it's not about that either, right? It's about you're here, you're present, you're living now. How do I take the next step? So it was a lot. I mean, that was a good month and a half, 2 months stall out before we could confirm that we were able to move forward with Michelle unveiling her charge.
That took a lot of courage for her, and it was a
courage.
beautiful story, really powerful to see that, right? Almost that full circle moment. What advice do you have for aspiring documentarians? Because I always love the concept to screen. I mean, you took a concept and you have had multiple screenings of it. So from those bookends, what advice do you have for aspiring documentarians?
For me, it's always keep in mind a 3-act structure. This is something that I can't drill as an editor for documentaries for years, being in every single, all the way from Crossfire Hurricane was a film that I worked on, all the way down to some short films. You really is important that you find that 3-act structure and you follow it. Even though we are a documentary, it's real, it still requires you to have an arc. Otherwise, it becomes something that is very hard to watch. So I've watched a lot of docs, being the executive director of Dead Center, having been an editor for hundreds and hundreds of years. It feels like that for me is my biggest piece of advice to any documentary filmmaker. You must have a 3-act structure. And if you want to see a really great 3-act structure with absolutely zero dialogue, I encourage everybody to watch Winged Migration, and you will get an idea of that arc. Yep.
Nicole,
What would you say?
I would say challenge your unconscious bias. I think my favorite thing about making documentaries is that we all have an unconscious bias, and to challenge that within yourself and to recognize it within yourself and go into a storyline with curiosity. Just constantly maintain curiosity and let go of agenda. It's just the most beautiful aspect of the process is to try and let go of that, because you're always going to be surprised and you're always going to be recognized, and building relationships. That's the other thing, like building relationships with people on the ground that are doing long-term care and long-term work in changing policy, in building rehabilitation, and working in reentry in this particular story. Maintaining relationships is huge.
beautiful. And talk a little bit more about that, Nicole, the impact-driven mission for this project, specifically the partners. I got to see it at Circle Cinema with the Kaiser Family Foundation, but I know you have other partners out there, so talk about that.
Yeah, so really, by virtue of working closely with Ellen and Poetic Justice, obviously an established nonprofit that Kaiser has been empowering for a while, and their relationship with Women in Recovery, with Remerge, with Arnall Foundation, Justice Link, Prosper OK. I mean, there's so many nonprofits and organizations that we are slowly building relationships with. My goal is always impact media, where it's not just awareness, here's a story, end of story, but how do we make this a long-term project where there's an ecosystem and connection to the map of the people that are doing all of this service on the ground and that are at it for years and years and years. So a film can have a lifespan of, it ends up in a film festival and it lands, end of story, and people become somewhat aware, and then it goes away very quickly. I'm always focused on long-term and how you make this true impact on the ground. So that's what we're working on now, and it's super exciting. And to a certain degree, they need us as much as we need them to understand the true impact on the ground, and for us to amplify these women's voices and their faces, and the fact that we're trying to intervene in generational trauma. We're trying to break down shame so that they can come into their own voice and their own power and their own poetry to go into the world again. So we're really building beautiful relationships, which is super important, and becoming just so impressed with the ecosystem across the state that are working so tirelessly, regardless of the system at large that is dehumanizing women and incarcerating more than most. So, yeah.
And I have to say that, I mean, the way we got into to be able to actually go in and film was because we have an incredible leadership right now, and people who are extremely thoughtful in this. And Nicole, you can speak more to this, like going in with Fleming and being able to talk, you know the names better than I do. So talk that story a little bit, and how we now have purchased back all of the private prisons. And I mean, Oklahoma may have its warts and bruises, but I'm telling you what, this is the best place I've ever lived in my entire life. Everything is possible in this state, and in the DOJ and in the Department of Corrections, and being able to see the changes that are happening here just fill my heart. I think we can make a massive difference in this state, and I see it happening. But Cole, you can talk more how we got in, because I think their story, and in the past, nobody would let a camera in there. So we just happened on the right time to be able to get our camera into the Oklahoma prisons.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't know if you've noticed, Anna, Amy should be running for lieutenant governor.
Yeah, I will.
She's the biggest spokesperson for the state.
It's a hefty statement.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's true. My ran away from, like you, and I ran away from the state as a kid with my hands in the air, thinking I would never ever come back. And I came back 8 years ago, and the most magical thing about this place is community building and grassroots efforts. And the fact that we could potentially take this film to the lieutenant governor and the governor and legislators. I mean, the CEO of Remerge is on the Women's Legislative Caucus, and she said to me, we need to get this in front of legislators. That's so rare. That's a very rare situation. I did a film in Texas, a huge film in Texas addressing oil and gas and eminent domain. It was very difficult to get it in front of one legislator. So it's, having connection to the DOC, Nicole Fleming, Trisha Everest is a woman that I grew up with. She's head of Department of Public Safety. She's been instrumental in changing the fact that there are no more private prisons in the state of Oklahoma. There was a New York Times article that was not amplified enough. That's a very, very big deal that other states are coming to Oklahoma and saying, how did you do this? So it's just snapping again. So that's very good news, and part of this coalition moving towards what Trisha refers to as modernization of the system, and more focus on rehabilitation. Yeah.
Well, thank you I've learned a lot just in our conversation about our system. I don't think a lot of us know, who are outside of these very important nonprofits and organizations on the ground doing the work. And I'm always so blown away at the generosity of our community, like you said, in Tulsa and Oklahoma City and throughout the state. So what is next? How can we get involved? Because I know this is not just a documentary. This is a movement.
Go ahead, Amy.
I think the greatest way for you to get involved right now is to sign up for our newsletter, which is on poeticjustice.com, and you can sign up for our website there. That's the greatest place for us to have communion and conversation and be able to kind of brainstorm what our next moves are. One of the things Nicole and I are very interested in doing is actually being able to connect our artists on the inside with artists on the outside, and to be able to really build a bridge so that we don't have to, don't have to be in prison to be able to participate in the growth of these women. Two is that it's really hard to see the growth of these women while they're incarcerated, so we need to get something happening on the outside. We are super interested in installations and being able to create a world where people can step into it and kind of experience what these women have gone through. So for us, it is, if you're an artist, help us. We're looking for muralists. We're looking for animators. I mean, there's a million different things that we want to be able to support these graphic designers to help them build t-shirts. The idea is, how do you take this art form that they're learning and bring it into the community at large, right? Because we're so isolated from these beautiful women while they're in there. The other thing that I would recommend is check out Poetic Justice. They're poeticjustice.org, and you can purchase the books, which then that's all the published books of all the poetry for, I think there's 8 or 10 or 15 of those books, all the published poetry of these women. We want these women's words to be seen, heard, thought about, discussed. So for me, those are two really great options of how to stay involved with us.
Yeah, and we're super focused on a few film festivals, of which we'll know more by like end of spring, early summer. And then after that, we want to do public screenings. So Mayflower Church reached out. They want to do a screening. The Oklahoma Mental Health Association wants to do a screening. And then to do panels like you saw at Circle and bring in Poetic Justice graduates, which is so powerful to have these women sit on a panel and talk about their experience. Yeah, so host a screening. So we're building that out on the website. But again, to sign up for the newsletter, and then hopefully in the notes you can follow us on the socials.
Perfect. So Nicole, Amy, I want you both to answer this. What did you learn about yourself filming this?
I learned, makes me cry too, is listening to one woman in particular, Michelle, who's our main character, say that she has discovered freedom regardless of those walls. And that's something that I aspire to live by, no matter what, is inner freedom. And sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. But to be stripped of absolutely everything and live behind barbed wire and live in orange, and to truly, like, honestly see her live in a place of inner freedom is just stunning and so inspiring, and a reminder to practice all the time. Yeah.
And I think the thing that these women that I learned, I knew inherently, but to hear the women say it, is that not all the women in prison are bad women. They just made a really bad decision that put them there. And I knew that in my heart, but to hear these women say that and then to actually get close and touch them and hear them and like feel their hugs in their bodies, to me, it's just really, really important that we remember that these are human, like these are people as well. And how in the world, I came from Los Angeles 8 years ago. How in the world, Los Angeles County has 7 million people. Oklahoma State has just over 4. And we have more women incarcerated. When we moved here 8 years ago, we had more women incarcerated than anywhere else in the world. It doesn't make sense to me, right? And somehow we can put these women away and forget that they are humans with babies, with parents, with trying to break generational trauma. Like, we have forgotten, this is a group of forgotten women. If we can put that many women, I promise you, our Oklahoma women are no worse than any other woman anywhere in the world, except laws are being written to put these women away. And then it's secular, their daughters, and then their daughters. And it's something that is just, I mean, you put it on repeat. So for me, it's that the humanization. And I really hope that this film will give that to people. That the humanization of what we are doing to these women, what we are doing to their families. We are a state that says it's so important that you keep that child, but who's helping the children when you put the mother in prison for something she didn't do?
Yeah, and I would say too, I mean, this is a whole nother podcast because we didn't make a film on the system itself, but the big reason, and people can look into this, is the failure to protect law, to really dissect that. That is one of the very specific reasons why Oklahoma incarcerates more women than most. And then the Oklahoma Survivors Act that passed in, I think, spring of 2024. And that basically gives women the recognition of their abuse being a reason why they participated in a crime. So protecting themselves. Yeah. So that's a huge one to consider. And that a lot of that we learned because again,
I learned all of that.
I learned, yeah. And judges, rural judges, certain DAs. I mean, we have a lot of work to do. And again, there's a lot of work that's being done by some incredible policymakers and organizations on the ground. So, yeah.
And we have the most incredible women in the world here in Oklahoma as well, period, full stop. Wherever we're finding them right now, like if it's in the prisons or if it's YouTube women sitting here with me, we're here. It's just about how do we help everybody find their voice to make a difference. We're only 4 million in the state. We can make a difference.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of storytelling. So I hope this story goes far and wide and affects everyone who watches it and encourages them to join the movement in whatever way that is, because it seems like there's a lot of branches to this and a lot of avenues for change. But we're in the perfect state, right? Because
Thank you. Thank you, Anna Barry.
We are in the perfect state.
It's creatives. That's the new log line, my perfect state. Got it.
Perfect state.
It is, though, for me, not for everybody, but it certainly is for me.
And watch out for Amy Janes as Lieutenant Governor in 2030 something.
Yeah, let's say 8 years, right? Give me 8 years.
Love that idea. That would be fun. Would you?
Oh my God, I would love that.
Would you be the first female lieutenant governor?
I don't know that.
That's a fun fact to look into. I bet you would.
That might be.
All right. So for all of our viewers, that's poeticjusticedoc.com and follow the movement there. I want to end with a little Dead Center Film Festival tease because I know it's coming up and it's where I met you both last year.
Yeah.
So tell us about it.
So the Dead Center Film Festival is going into our 26th year, and it's going to be one of the best yet. We have really focused on independent and emerging voices this year. So plan on seeing some films and learning about some filmmakers that otherwise might not cross Oklahoma's path. You're going to find them here. We are excited to say that 5 of the Oscar-nominated short films were all official selections of Dead Center Film Festival over the past few years. So our quality and quantity of films is rising every day. And then save the date. May 17th is our kickoff party. We're going to be teaming up with the Philharmonic, doing an incredible piece in Scissortail Park that not only supports the film community, but also gets us deep, deep, deep into how and why we score films. So it should be a really great night, May 17th, but the festival then goes from June 10th to the 14th, and we look forward to seeing you all there. And thank you, Anna Barry.
My pleasure. Nice to see you, ladies. And thank you for your hard, creative, important, meaningful work. The state is lucky to have you all here.
And you too, my love.
Thanks,
Continue the great work.
Yeah,
you.
All right.
appreciate it.
Everyone watching, listening Behind the Scenes Oklahoma.
Cheers.